Hey friends, it's me, the Frugal Travelista. Zimbabwe was going through a cash crisis when I arrived. I didn't know that. I didn't know that when I flew into Zimbabwe, I wouldn't be able to get any money. Because if I had known, I would have gotten money before I got on the plane to Zimbabwe. Before I get into the footage, I have to give you some context because it's kind of important. So I was in South Africa for about a month doing research in the summer of 2018. And I had planned to fly from South Africa to Kenya to do some vacationing. But then things changed at the last minute. So 4 days before leaving South Africa, I changed my itinerary from Nairobi, Kenya to Harare, Zimbabwe. So typically when I travel, I do a lot of research and pre-planning and pre-reading and preparation so that when I go, I know what I should expect. And as a single female traveler, it's just safer and wiser to know what you're getting into. Now, I wasn't nervous about going to Zimbabwe because I actually have a friend and a colleague that's Zimbabwean, and I had heard not only from him but lots of people on the continent that Zimbabwe is actually very safe, very friendly, and lovely country to visit. And so I didn't have any fear or anxiety about my safety. I just wasn't prepared. I hadn't read anything. So when I arrived, I was a little surprised that the country was going through a cash crisis. Now, I knew about the economic crisis. I knew that under Mugabe's government, it was basically driven into the ground. I knew that people were in destitute situations, and that's why so many Zimbabweans were in South Africa and in the US and all over the world. I knew those things, but I didn't actually know that cash was hard to come by. So, all right, Frugal Travelista here. I'm in the heart of downtown Harare, and I'm actually in the less congested area because I've been walking from street corner to street corner trying to find an ATM that works. And none of them work. In fact, the people have laughed at me for wanting to get cash. One guy said, "When's the last time?" He was with his friends. "When's the last time you got cash out of an ATM?" And his friends laughed. And one of them said, "Oh, 1 year ago." So, and the problem isn't that there aren't ATMs. Look at this. It's just that there are no money in the ATMs. They look like they work, but they don't. The only thing you can do at an ATM today is get your balance inquiry. Maybe they say tomorrow if you come back to the bank when the bank is open and then you go inside and you talk to the people, maybe they can get you some small amounts of cash. That's crazy. It's a cash crisis. That's what the people are calling it, and I can see why. You just the guy that works at the backpackers lounge I'm staying at says he gets paid his monthly salary, it gets deposited into his bank. If he wants to request a salary, it's a 10-week delay to get those dollars or those bond notes. It's crazy. So when I arrived at my hotel, I went to the front desk to check in, and I pulled out my handy dandy travel credit card, which I'm going to do a whole video on later, but I won't do it now. And I handed it to the guy behind the desk, and he said, "Oh, we can't take that." And I said, "Oh, what, Visa?" Thinking that the problem was Visa, so I was going to pull out my American Express. And he was like, No, we can't take your credit card. The banks don't work. I was like, the banks? Oh, well, this is an American bank. And he was like, "Yeah, we can't take it. It's just I can try it." And he tried to put my card in the key fob thing in the credit card machine, and it didn't work. I was like, "No, there's room. It's fine. The credit card's fine." He's like, "No, it's not your card. It's our bank's." And I was like, "Okay, well, what should I do?" And he was like, "Well, you can pay cash." I was like, I don't have cash. I don't have enough cash. Now, I was staying at a hostel, so the rate for the room was only $14 a night, and I was staying at this particular hostel for 2 or 3 nights. So it wasn't that expensive, but it still wasn't like money I had planned to spend. And like I said, I didn't go to the ATM before boarding the plane to Zimbabwe. I still, by this point, even though I'm checking into the hotel, still don't know there's a cash crisis going on, right? And so the guy was like, yeah, we only take cash. And I was like, well, I don't have any Zimbabwean dollars. He was like, that's okay. We take American. I was like, American what? And he was like, dollars. I was like, you take American dollars? He was like, yeah. I was like, well, I don't really have very many of those. You know, I don't really have any to give you. He was like, well, we take Rand, which is the South African currency. I was like, I don't have enough to pay for 3 nights in this hotel and like to do other stuff, you know? And he was like, well, yeah, that's what we do. So I'm like sitting there kind of beginning to sweat bullets, but you know, in the back of my head, I know I have an option because like as a responsible traveler that I am, I never leave the US without packing a secret stash of American dollars, because I learned a lesson a long time ago traveling to Cuba that you always have to have American dollars on you when you are traveling in the world, because unfortunately US dollars are coveted and people want them, and it's just safe to always have American dollars. Just it. So I had this secret stash in my bag, but it's a stash that I don't ever plan on using. Like I always take it with me when I go on trips, but it's like just there in case of emergency. And this was like rapidly turning into an emergency because the guy was like, there's no other options. I was like, okay. So I say, well, let me think about it. So I step aside, and as I'm stepped to the side trying to figure out what I can do, this white man comes up to the desk and he's like, hey man, can I go ahead and get a room for tonight? And he's speaking in a South Afrikaans accent, but he's very like surfer guy, right? He's probably from Cape Town, swanky part, you know, just very cool, laid back kind of dude. But he's like, hey man, can I get a room for tonight? And the guy behind the desk is like, yeah, how are you paying? And he's like, if I give you American, would you give me a discount? And the guy behind the desk is like, yeah. So I'm watching this whole thing as I'm thinking about what I'm going to do. So I was like, well, I guess he was telling the truth. People do use American. And clearly I knew that guy was from South Africa because I recognized his accent and I had just got off the plane from South Africa. And there's a way to get a discount. Ding, ding, Frugal Travelista. Ding, ding. So after that guy's done, I go back up to the desk. I've already pulled out some money from my secret stash. And I say, well, you know, if I pay American, can I get a discount? He was like, but aren't you American? I was like, yeah. He was like, well, why would you get a discount? I was like, look, man, I just saw that guy get a discount. And he was like, yeah, but he's South African. I was like, we're still paying American. And he was just like, okay, I'll give you a discount. Instead of $14 a night, you can pay $13. So $1 a night discount. Now, I normally would not be bartering over $1, especially when I knew that people needed the money, but I also needed the money. I only had like, I don't know, my secret stash is only like $150. You know, I had to, like, I'm in Zimbabwe for like 14 days. I got to make this money last. That means food, transportation, taxi. I can't afford to be paying out the side with people. So I'm like, well, can I get the room for $13 a night? He was like, yeah, no problem. So I handed my money and then I'm on my way. So there's no functional, the banks don't have any money. They don't have it. The men on the streets have like big stashes of money and they are selling cash on the black market. But that doesn't help me as a tourist. I really can't get any money. I'm going to try to go into a grocery store to see if I have better luck and get cash back. Alright, I'm slowly figuring out how this cash situation works in Zen. Basically, I went to the grocery store. They didn't have any cash. They literally had 10 cents I went to every single cashier in a big grocery store, and all they opened their drawers and showed me, and they had 10-cent coins. That's it, literally a bunch of 10-cent coins. If you put them all together, they probably have $5 in each of the registers. And so then I went back to the guy who told me about the ATMs all being closed down, and I said, man, look, I need some cash, what can I do? He said, you gotta buy it on the black market. And so since I have US dollars, I was able to exchange $10 for 12 bond notes. So basically the dollar, even though it's worth it's 1 for 1, I'm gonna come out on the winning end here because everybody wants US dollars. They don't trust the banks, they don't trust the bond notes, they don't trust money in Zim. Okay, so let me slow down and clarify this really quickly. 1 Zimbabwean dollar is worth 1 American dollar. But because Zimbabweans don't trust the Zimbabwean dollar or the bond note, they are willing to trade 12 Zimbabwean dollars for 10 American dollars, even though the exchange rate is 1 for 1. So because I have the more precious commodity at this point, the US dollar, I'm coming out a little bit ahead, but I have to do the exchange on the black market. Basically, there's these guys with stacks of cash standing on like every 5th corner in downtown Harare, and they're just like fanning the cash, fanning, like hundreds of dollars, fanning, waiting for somebody to walk up and say, hey man, you want to do an exchange? So they're basically the bank. The bank doesn't have any money. These guys on the corner have all the money. This next little clip is me trying to capture the conversation with the on the corner banker dude.
What? $22 for 120.
How much for just 10? $12. So it's better if I do 100. It's better if I do 100. No, it's the same.
You can just $20.
$12 for 10.
Yeah.
Okay. You have rand too. How much for rand? How much for rand?
$10.
Oh, 1 for 1. Okay. All right. Thank you.
What do you need?
US. But I don't need any right now. I just wanted to know. Okay. Thank you. So I just did a little black market street exchange situation where somebody took me kind of around the corner. I gave a $10 bill and I got 12 bond notes. Thank God I got some cash. This is how it's working here in Zimbabwe. For some of you who are watching this video, you might not know why Zimbabweans may not trust the bond coin. If you already know, then don't spoil the surprise for others. But I'll give you a little bit of context about Zimbabwean currency. This is what the bond note looks like. It's a $1 coin. And then from there, it goes up to a $2. This is a $2 Zimbabwean dollar. And it goes to a 5. There's also a 10, a 20, 100, so on and so forth. But Zimbabwe experienced what people are calling hyperinflation, meaning that back in, 2008, 2009, the country started releasing really large notes. For example, here's one for $10 million. That's right, 10 million. The $10 million banknote from the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. This, at one time, was not enough to buy a loaf of bread. People were getting paid hundreds of millions of dollars and couldn't buy basic necessities. Okay, so this is 10 million. How about this one? This is 5 billion. $5 billion by the Reserve of Zimbabwe. This is 10 billion, 20 billion, 50 billion. I think the highest that they ever came out with was something like 100 trillion. Yes, $100 trillion banknote. It actually is the largest legal tender in the history of the world. I still don't think you could buy a loaf of bread with it though. So even though I was able to pick up millions and trillions of dollars, which I bought on the corner for like $8, the billions and trillions aren't even worth the paper they're printed on, actually. But you know, I made it through my trip on my 150 American dollars. I was able to stretch it. But who the real survivors in this story are the Zimbabwean people. I mean, my goodness, like my little scenario, not having enough American dollars in comparison to people who like can't get money out of the ATMs, or who get paychecks for $10 million and can't afford to buy bread, or get money deposited into their banks and can't access it for 10 weeks later. Like, you know, that's amazing. And so folks have made it, and fortunately I do too. Thanks for watching. Frugal Travelista here, over and out.